Sam Sorbo Show.
I'm gravely concerned that the nuclear deal with Iran will prove to be the marriage certificate of that unholy union. I know that some well-intentioned people sincerely believe that this deal is the best way to block Iran's path to the bomb. But one of history's most important, yet least learned lessons is this: the best intentions don't prevent the worst outcomes. The vast majority of Israelis believe that this nuclear deal with Iran is a very bad deal.
The best intentions don't prevent the worst of outcomes. Welcome back to the show. I'm Sam Sorbo. I'm joined now by Diana West, who's the author of American Betrayal. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sam.
So we've talked about the Iran deal a lot, and now we see these developments in Syria with Russia attacking different forces in Syria, none of which happen to be ISIS. And that, of course, was Russia's stated purpose in sending their planes over there, was that they were going to try to combat ISIS. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a very complicated, fractured battleground. And the strikes that we've seen have taken this fractured mosaic of terrorist groups out, some of whom are related to ISIS, al-Nusra Front, for example. All of these names, I mean, the brand names of jihad, really. What I make of it is that we're looking at further descent into the chaos that really comes about from our original sin, which was believing that we could partner with moderates in the Islamic world to remake it. I think that this is a pattern that we have still not reckoned with. So we Americans at this point are fearful that Russia is striking at rebel groups that we have supported and seeing that as some kind of a black and white dividing line. Whereas I would say that we're looking at, in that very small snapshot of the picture, which is really not the larger problem of Russia feeling unfettered enough to be moving in as a big actor in the Middle East. I mean, I think that's the big story, not so much which rebel group Russia is striking. But I don't think that our fat is in the fire because of which rebel group Russia is striking. We're looking at a chaotic situation with Russia entering the Middle East as an actor, feeling unbounded, with all of the implications of a strengthened Hezbollah, strengthened Iran, looming down at Israel, which is no longer operating with the freedom it had been in terms of self-defense. So it's a very large battleground, and I don't focus on which groups Russia is striking at this point. My own feeling, I don't understand the American obsession with removing Assad in that context of stability. I think anything coming off that Syrian battleground that will replace Assad will be a more aggressive force. You will see, whether it's Muslim Brotherhood, whether it's whichever front group, you're going to see a more ramped up jihadist control.
This is a great point, is that we somehow fixated on removing Assad, which is exactly what we did with Saddam Hussein. But then we weren't willing to continue the fight, right? When we removed ourselves, we see this vacuum created. It was like cutting off the head of the Hydra, and then all of a sudden we had three heads to fight instead of just the one, or to oppose.
Like that. Yeah, it is like that. I think, though, that when you look at what's been going on in terms of where all this comes from, I think we have to also go back to Libya, which I think is sort of the trigger for a lot of this new level of chaos and violence that we have absolutely no control of, and that was a tremendous blunder to remove Gaddafi, which unleashed such my word of the day, unfettered, just absolutely freely operating.
You know what?
Jihadist movement.
I want to jump in because Russia is not unfettered. Russia is emboldened. I see you're unfettered, and I raise you too, because he's emboldened. He's actually gone into the military to our installation and said, get out, we're taking over here. I mean,
we have been gravely weakened by not just Obama years. I mean, I think this is another fallacy in terms of trying to look at this as a big picture. Certainly going back with the Bush years, this has been a continuum of the same, really, Sino-Islam involvement in the Islamic world that has led us to all of these fantasies that have not worked, that have, the best intentions gone awry. Understatement of the century. So, we're looking at a terrible situation, and we have been weakened by the past 15 years of this feckless American foreign policy, Bush to Obama. So yes, Russia is emboldened, unfettered, very terrifying. What does that mean in down the road? What is America's role? Right now, I don't really think. I just don't feel that we're particularly we're in nowhere near a driver's seat anywhere.
No, we're not even in the trailer.
No, we're not. But you see most of the discussion going as to which rebel groups is Russia striking, which I think is a very a blinkered way of looking at it, especially when these rebel groups are not our friends. These rebel groups are not people we can ally with. These rebel groups are not going to build a peaceful Syria that will live in harmony with its neighbors. I mean, this is
but hold
fantasy.
On.
This is
Yeah, hold on, because we allied ourselves with a rebel group that was fighting Assad, and so in a sense this is a proxy attack because they have attacked the group that we've allied ourselves with.
Which one?
And we're which one?
Many. Which one yesterday was allied with us that is now? They're very also. You see this tribal instability. This. They war among themselves. I was actually reading up on some of these names, which I don't pretend to be expert on, but trying to get a sense of who's which. They all fracture every other day. They really with this group. They rename themselves. They're basically, Sunni jihadist groups that change their name and their loyalties depending on what day of the week it seems to be, in order to pursue their own goals, whether we support them or not, which I think is insane. It's like supporting triple-headed hydras. Yeah.
But don't get lost in the weeds. The fact is that we chose a group that we were supporting, and Russia
I don't know which group that was.
And so we've got senior U.S. military leaders and defense officials debating whether we should protect them. So
yeah, I think that would be insanity.
This is right, but it's a real thing. Russia attacked us by proxy, and they knew what they were doing. And now it's up to us to go, or do we feel like escalating this? And I certainly hope that we don't.
Yeah,
but,
I certainly hope we don't, especially for these.
It's not unfettered;
groups.
It's emboldened.
Yeah. Yes, it's Russia
right?
doing what it wants to do. It's very similar to the influx of Muslim men into Europe. They are pushing, and there is nobody home. There is no structure. There is no law. They are just pushing
in fact,
and moving through.
The EU is deliberating whether to penalize Hungary for putting in laws to protect its borders. How dare you protect your borders?
For executing EU law that demands that member state protect their borders. It's even worse than that. They are actually the only EU actor that is enforcing the external EU border as stipulated by EU treaty. So that's how insane that is.
In fact, my understanding
Hungary
is that
for their own law.
Right.
Supporting their own law. But the EU law.
Right. And this is how far this insanity, this socialist insanity has gone, is that the laws now are meaningless. We have it in the United States. They have it over there. We see the results, and we seem completely helpless to do anything. Diana West, we've run out of time. Oh, do you want to stay? I've got time. You got some time?
Sure, I'll stay.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with Diana West and continue the conversation. Stay tuned. I'll be right back.
Mass migration. That if I win, they're going back. They're going back. I'm telling you. They're going back. Because, military tactics are very interesting.
All right, welcome back to the show. Sorry, I had something in my throat. Welcome back to the show. I'm Sam Sorbo, 800-876-4123. The first part of that clip was Hillary Clinton commenting on Gaddafi's death. And yes, you heard the cackle. She thought it was funny. We came, we saw, he died, and that's a big joke to her. And we are reaping the consequences of that horrible, callous policy. Welcome back to the show, Diana West, the author of American Betrayal and Death of the Grown-Up. You can find her at dianawest.net. Diana,
Yes.
you mentioned Gaddafi earlier, and he predicted this.
Yes.
Shortly before
Yes.
he died.
Yes, he did. He predicted, well, for some time before he died, he was serving as a lid on this massive migration surge into Europe from the south. And he predicted that if he went, this would be a way of, he was essentially cursing Europe with this idea that the
Right.
population of the southern lands would stream into Europe and overwhelm it. And this is exactly what is going on. I personally don't believe it's a spontaneous movement. It is certainly drawn by the honeypot of countries like Germany that are inviting and indeed supporting all of this population transfer into their country with welfare benefits. We do the exact same thing. I think people forget that the waves of migration that built this country were essentially, until we get to the latter half of the 20th century, were essentially people drawn here by freedom and opportunity, no welfare, no social safety net, nothing. That is a huge difference in motivation and in the sort of magnetizing of a country to this the rest of the world. And at this point, we're looking at a Europe that is playing the leading role in its own destruction by allowing it, but not just allowing it, by encouraging it and paying for it. And so this is the sickness at the heart of Europe. But this is something
Purchasing
that Gaddafi, just as a strategic player, was instrumental in keeping a lid on, in addition to his role as keeping a lid on the most explosive edge of jihad in his world.
And yet Hillary was laughing about the fact that he was taken from power. They were thrilled with that.
Yes, they were thrilled with that, to the point where I reported back, I guess it was early last year or so, about negotiations that Gaddafi was desperately trying to have with NATO, with America, with anyone, through different channels in order to prevent the NATO war on Libya. That would have, his offer entailed a discussion of his stepping down peacefully, and this was absolutely ignored by our Pentagon, by our Obama administration, by Hillary Clinton, and never even entertained as a even 72-hour pause in the plans to begin the war on Libya. These people are so war happy that they would even avoid a potential peaceful solution in order to enact their own ideological fantasies about changing the world. Well, all of it is blown up in their faces and the world's, which is much worse. And so we are watching this chaos just spin out of control. Again, we were talking before the break, with a severely weakened, destroyed, undermined, shot America.
Yeah. That doesn't add up, though, because we were so eager to negotiate a deal with Iran.
Yes, we're so eager to bomb some countries, and then we're so eager to talk until our tongues bleed with others.
To give them everything.
It doesn't add up. It's all ideological. It's all game playing. Iran is the most poisonous player here, and we talk with them. Yeah. People who actually can help us. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned before, because I said, Russia is attacking people that we've allied ourselves with, that we support. And you said, how do we know which rebels are on our side? And that's been a meme for the past day and a half or so about, well, we were supporting rebels, but how did we really know they were on our side? Diana, we're not on our side.
Yes, we're not on our side. Exactly. No, a long time ago, I sort of thought it through as Uncle Sam joins the jihad, and I believe it was in Libya that this thought occurred to me in terms of who we're aligned with. Looking at Egypt, another example, in terms of pulling the rug out from under Mubarak, another ally in the region, in order to enact this jihadist program that has indeed swept the Middle East. We've seen this with the so-called Arab Spring. I mean, isn't that a tawdry phrase at this point to even say? We've seen this chaos unleashed. Now we're seeing an Arab Spring in Europe, and this was actually a phrase that was coined by a former economic advisor to Putin named Ilyarinov. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but Ilyarinov, who is now a Cato Fellow. He left the Russian government, and he predicted an Arab Spring event in Europe that would take everyone's eyes off Putin's moves elsewhere, which I think is fairly solid prediction looking at events today.
But it's amazing how our president loves the distraction. I mean, within moments of the shooting in Oregon, he was out talking gun control. He hasn't said a peep about Russia. Hasn't said a peep about, about the mass migration. I call it invasion of Europe. Barely a word, and yet within moments of the gun violence in Oregon, oh my gosh, we obviously need more gun, and he's angry.
Right.
And I'm offended that he's so angry about that and doesn't really mind that we've got Pastor Saeed Abedini and others who are imprisoned in Iran who we never even tried. It was never considered to negotiate for their release.
Well, it's all about using people's lives, the lives of nations, to jam down an ideological agenda down everyone else's throats. It's a matter of manipulating the media, of using a tragedy, a horrifying, cataclysm in Oregon for a political end, to ignore what is going on before our eyes in Europe for another political end, bringing in, quote, refugees, these male military-age Muslims we're seeing streaming into Europe. We're supposed to be taking hundreds of thousands of them. When I heard Donald Trump yesterday say, I'm sorry, they have to go back, I cheer. I say, can I vote twice? I would vote for him twice on that issue alone. It's the only way to save a nation I'm serious. It sounds funny. I'm not serious. I hope I don't get investigated for voter fraud. But it's a very serious point, because it's just like the Hungarian prime minister. It is about saving a nation, and that is the most essential role that any leader can have in mind. And anyone who actually has that as their first purpose, to me, is someone worth following and supporting. And I find it amazing that such a comment by Trump, or the actions of the Hungarian prime minister and others, Geert Wilders in Netherlands, these are seen as outrageous, brave comments. This is the most amazing kind of outlier talk that you could actually discuss something having to do with your nation's survival in this day and age. And I think that shows to the point why our nations are choking and being destroyed by these ideological monsters, from Merkel to Obama. This is really about remapping the world. It is about utopian zealots with bureaucratic jobs, no accountability, reworking the entire globe, and they are doing it, and they are unbounded. They are our threat. More than Putin, I would actually venture. This is our true threat. He's also a true threat, but this is actually the more immediate threat, and probably the more irrevocable tactic of destruction.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, because we have become sort of inured to what's happening and
yes,
more accepting
very much
of it.
So.
The fact that, right? What did you think of Netanyahu? Pretty strong speech.
It was a
45 seconds
gallant,
of silence
speech. It was amazing. A very good drama, I would say, as well. I mean, but I mean, this is real life drama. Nothing fake about it. To think that this speech is necessary, and again, it's where we are, what this entails. It's just, we are in such a crisis. And again, something happens, the president uses it to advance gun control. It's just. We're really ready for a change here in America, I would say, is basically the bottom line. But we are at a very parlous state of danger. I hope we make it to the next administration.
I just want to mention that Trez Burden on Twitter tweeted, "Yay, she stayed." He tweeted you as well. So I retweeted that because I thought that was pretty funny. I want to thank you for staying through, Diana West, and you can. Yes, and you can go to dianawest.net for more information and read American Betrayal, because it will give you new insights as to what's happening today in the world I'm Sam Sorbo. I'll be right back after a quick break. We're going to talk